right, as the attributes. What else are we going to have? We're going to have all of the normal expected stuff, which is like a title. That's going to be a string. What's that?
Oh, I was just saying the director.
Yeah, thank you. Yep, the director.
Hey, do you want help, or are you just gonna show us?
Sure, go ahead. Yeah.
I have this part done. Just the array part I didn't have done.
Okay, so we have a lot of this stuff, like the country. And by the way, even though like cast and director, there might be more than one in that field in the file. Like, let's just not worry about that. Let's not make yet more sorted array lists, right, for these things. Let's call enough. Just say, yeah, if all the rest of these besides categories, just throw them in, right? Just throw them in and call it good. We have a country, we have a release year. That is the one thing that I'd say is going to be an integer, right? The rating is a string, the duration is a string, right? All those things, because that has weird text in it, right? It has some weird stuff in it. There's also a description, that's also going to be a string, right? So to me, that's a pretty good list of just the normal stuff that's going to go into a movie, right? The main stuff that's going to go into a movie. Now, in terms of its methods, though, that starts getting a little more interesting. I am not suggesting we have set and get methods for all of those things. I think I would forego that for now.
Oh, I did. I was wondering. Okay.
Yeah, you can have them if you want, but I'm leaving them out, right? I'm leaving them out. So surely we're going to have this thing, right, which takes a movie and maybe has all of the data, right? So there may be a couple cases where we want to have this, like we want to have this big old movie constructor, right, that takes everything. Now notice it's also going to take in, right? It's also going to take in, all of those details. The only thing that it's not taking in my view, is the category, right? Because we can do those separately. So we're going to have a thing that's going to say add category, right?
Quick question, Bill.
Yeah.
Should we overload movies so it could take it like the array list as well for like the cast or whatnot, where it has multiple values? Or we'll do all that work in a movie constructor?
Say that again. Sorry.
So should we overload the movie constructor so for like when we're passing the cast as a string, we could pass in an array of values instead? Or
I would not go to that trouble.
Okay, because that's how I wrote it originally. I'll just get rid of that and just pass in the string and do all the work in the constructor.
I would. That's going to be a lot of extra work.
Yep, gotcha.
That's going to be a lot of extra work.
Yep.
I would say, and we'll talk later about why this is necessary, but in order to compare movies, you're going to want this extra constructor that just takes the title.
Yeah.
Right, that just takes the title. But in this case, when I'm reading from the file, I can say, hey, I found this comedy. I found the word comedy. I want you to add that. And so what it's going to do is you pass it that string. It's going to go find it in the overall list and then point to that string. So add category seems funny that we're passing it a string that is the category, but what we're doing is looking up the official one title in that one category in the static list and actually pointing to that, right? So it's adding the category to this movie, but by pointing to the correct string, right? We're probably going to want to have things like get category count. That's how many categories is this movie in, right? We're probably going to have get category that takes a string and returns the official one, right? The official string from the list. Okay. So you tell me a category and I'll give you a pointer to the official one from the full list, right? That's a funny one. And also maybe one that just says get categories, which just returns a string, like put together all your categories so that I can use them in a toString or something like that. Okay. So you're just going to have some category manipulation methods in here, right? We also talked about needing compare to, right? If you're going to compare movies, you have to have a compare to in which you pass it another movie, right? And compare to returns an integer by its nature. So we're going to have a compare to. we're probably going to want an iterator. We'll talk more about iterators, right? You're probably going to want to have one of those, and we'll talk more about it, but probably this is going to return an iterator over its categories. In fact, let's leave this out for now, right? Maybe you want a toString. Okay. So to me, that's a pretty good start at what movie's going to have in it. The categories are the only ones that are a little bit funky, because we have to think about the fact that we've got this overall static category list, and then we've also got the categories that pertain to each movie, and how to make sure that we're storing the one copy of the string, etc., like that, right? Is that making sense?
Yeah, so far.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the only other thing then to add a little more a little more meat to the bones here is going to be in Movie Manager. What are we going to have here? I'm guessing Movie Manager is probably going to have an empty constructor, right? We're probably going to have get movie by index, which is going to return a movie. We're probably going to have get movies by title, right? Where you give me a title, right? You give me a title, it's just a string, and what am I going to give you back? Array of movies, right? You tell me the title, I'll give you back a list of all the movies that have that title. Same thing here, get movies by category, right? You give me a category, a movie category that's a string, and I'm going to give you back a list of all of the movies in that have that category in their list of categories. Okay? Make sense?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Perfect sense.
You're
right now.
probably going to have a private thing, maybe let's say, called get read categories from file. Wait, are we doing that? No, we're not doing that here. Never mind. Probably one called read movies from file, right? So we're going to have some way to read the movies from the file, right? So we probably have a private method to do that. You could just call it in the constructor. You could put that in the constructor. That's probably all that we need there, right? And as before, maybe return a Boolean to say, could this be accomplished, right? Was that accomplished okay? So something along the lines of that. Okay, so here's our movie manager, here's our movies, and that almost fits on the screen. That's pretty good, right? We're missing a couple of little pieces like iterable, iterators, again, a couple of interfaces. The only one that I think is really necessary here is probably listing comparable, because that's a key one that we need to do here, right? And we're going to say implements interface, right? Because movies have to be comparable. Okay. So we do have a couple of little things still to deal with. We haven't really understood maybe fully the whole iterator story and the iterable story. So we need to talk about that if we have time on Tuesday. But I think this is now a kind of reasonable list of things to get us started in terms of this design. Does that make sense, folks?
Yeah, I got a quick question about the sorted array list get value function with the template.
Right.
I mean, I think this will probably come to me and other people later when we start coding.
Yeah.
But I don't get how it makes it easier.
Because you can't create a generic array, right? So in your code, you can't create a generic array. So you can't create and return an array of e's.
But if we're taking in a parameter as a generic array, then how do we even? Or am I misreading that?
Remember how arrays.copyOf, right?
Oh, it creates a fresh array.
It can create an array based on an existing array, and then you don't have the need to create that generic array.
Okay, so why are you writing template there? Or is that just
Well, what else do you want to call? I don't have another name for it,
Oh, right. Okay.
right?
Okay,
I
that
think
makes
that
No,
is
okay.
in fact what it is.
Yeah.
Is the template for the returned array, right? It is literally like, I'm going to pass you a 0 size thing, but the thing is the right data type as a template for the thing you're giving me back.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
thanks
I
for
think
asking that.
I think template's the right word, but it's not a magic word. It's just like,
Yeah.
yeah, you give me the thing, because otherwise I can't construct the thing, right? I can't make the thing. But if you give me a starter, then I can make it the right size and fill it in, because I'm not creating a generic array in the process, or trying to.
Yeah, I think part of the reason I'm getting confused is because we have all these E's. We have value E and template E, but they're different E's. And
They
so-
are. Well,
Yeah.
this case it's an E array, right? You got to pass in the template that's an E array, whereas
Yeah,
the value itself is just an E.
The
Yeah,
value, yeah.
right. Yeah, and you'd see the problem is, if we don't talk about that part, you are going to code and you're going to go crazy trying to figure out how to return an array of E's. You're going to be going down the object and the casting, and you're going to keep getting errors. Like literally, that's a rabbit hole from which you will never emerge. So we just have to realize that anytime we want to return an array of E's, we just sort of give up and say, give me a template for the E, just like, remember with ArrayList, when you ask ArrayList to give you back a 2 array, when you ask ArrayList to run 2 array, it wants the template, right?
Right.
If Java's 2 array code in ArrayList can't figure out how to do that, we're not figuring out how to do that,
Yeah.
right? They've already gone down that road. They can't do it. So we just submit and say, we understand, right? If you want an array of E's back, we're going to take an array of E's in as a starting point, as a template. Yep. Make sense?
So in the movie method, do we need to, like it says, is string title instead of title string, that one little bit.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that quite. Say again?
In the movie
Yeah.
class, after the constructor, you have a constructor just with string.
With just the title. Yeah, it shouldn't say string title. That's not good UML. It should say title : string. That's better UML. Is that what you were saying?
Yes, that was it. Yeah.
Yeah, that was bad UML, sorry. The reason that we're going to do that is when we have comparable, right? Because this is comparable, because this is a sorted array list, we're going to want to run the binary search to find it. The only way you can do a binary search is by relying on compare to, right? So you're going to have to modify. In fact, in the author's code, right, in the author's search.java, there's actually a string version of binary search. We're going to leverage something like that because it uses compare to, right? So instead of using greater than and less than for our searches, we have to use compare to, and this takes care of it because we say E extends comparable E, right? So because of that fact, when you want to look up a movie by its title, the right way to do it is we're going to create a movie that has only the title, right? We don't care about any of the other data. And therefore, when we go to compare it, we can use compare to and compare title to title, right? So our index of all of our code will be working great with that because our natural sorting in movie will be by title. So that's all tied in, right? That's all tied in. Does that make sense, Idris?
Oh, yes, it does.
All right. Any other questions about what we've got here so far? We do need to talk about iterators and iterable and that kind of fun stuff, but we didn't talk about it with ArrayList because we ran out of time, so we really need to revisit that. If we have time on Tuesday when we talk about recursion, I think we should have time to talk about this. I think we'll be okay.
Just real quick, in your sorted array list, the part that you said that is not real UML, in a good UML diagram, would you just get rid of that just because we know that you're going to handle that through ArrayList?
You're still going to write them.
Okay.
Right? You're actually still going to write them. I'm just saying that the dotted line, that there's no such thing as a dotted line, a dashed line in a real UML diagram. We are going to write those methods. Right?
Okay, you're just saying that
I'm just saying that in a UML, there's no such thing as a dashed line meaning something, right? In UML.
Okay. All
So
right.
if I really wanted to do that, I would make a note.
Got it.
If I want to do it in professional form, I would say, right, these methods are pass-throughs. Right? That would be a more professional UML, like make a space so that I see that it's a different section, and then I'll write a note that reminds me, excuse me, reminds me and other readers that all of the ones down here, I am writing them, but they're all one-liners that are literally making use of the array list correctly.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense to me. And yeah, and my question was like what the UML would look like professionally. So thank you.
That's about as close as we can get, right? But I think, yeah, and making them in a separate section just by putting a space is a little bit of a hint. Yeah, the recording is still going. If we get to the end of this, I think we're pretty close to the end of the UML, sans the iteration, iterable, iterator, like all that discussion we have to have. But I think we're pretty close to the end of getting the UML looking pretty good. So we'll stop the recording, but yes, the recording's still going, and it will go until we feel like we've answered all these questions. But I think we're darn close.
And so the object diagram would just be kind of going through this with, I think